have a very formal plan, right? Okay. We're going to introduce ourselves and then interrupt each other with questions and thoughts as we go through our slides, unless that plan changes. So, my name is Ashley Hawkins. I'm co-founder and executive director of Studio 23.
And I'm Bob Kaputof, and I teach in the kinetic imaging department here at Virginia Commonwealth University.
All right, I'm going to click. Here we go. Okay, so this is my personal background story. I have 2 kids and a baby daddy. So Max just turned 4 and Zoe's a year and a half. I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University with a BFA in painting and printmaking. Went back for a Master's of Public Administration at the Wilder School here at VCU with a concentration in nonprofit management because I started a nonprofit and I didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS. So now, this is kind of a little bit of a cop-out, but my art practice I view as organization building and the creative enterprise that is Studio 23 and keeping it running and funded and exciting, hopefully, every day. But I do occasionally make my own work, which these are some prints. Some Birds is a recent one of mother-son bonding experience. So I made the screen and then my son and I colored them in together. So it's a way of continuing to make work while also spending time with the child that I only see, 2 or 3 hours a night after work. And some earlier prints from VCU and shortly thereafter made at Studio 23. So this is since my artwork is building this organization, ostensibly. Have any of you been there to Studio 23? John has. He was our auctioneer last year and hopefully this year too. September 21st, save the date. So our mission is to give people the space, tools, and education they need to find that thing they love and make it. So we started right out of VCU realizing that we'd had access to a bunch of really cool stuff and very expensive equipment that took up more than our apartment's worth of space. So we decided to create sort of a surrogate studio space, work environment, specifically for printmaking when we first started out. So our programs now, we have about 100 members who have 24/7 access to the studio and all the equipment therein. Classes, so really focused on short skill building classes, professional development. You can come in as a graphic designer and learn how to do hand lettering and then take it back and add it to your portfolio. Internships, so we take college and post-grad and some high school interns as well. And they get equivalent studio trade for any time they spend interning with us. So they're able to continue making their own work, especially if they have graduated. Our mobile print truck, S23 to go, which sounded like a really good name at the time, and now nobody has any idea what that means. So I always preface it with mobile print truck. So it looks like an ice cream truck, but it is a go-go gadget mobile of essentially printmaking equipment where we can pop up anywhere, screen print t-shirts, tote bags, postcards, large relief prints, kind of anything people dream up, we take this truck and do it. And then we produce our own swag. So that's one area where I still make stuff. It's just not my own stuff, but I get to kind of micromanage other people's design work and then see it printed on T-Tels. And then we sponsor events like our auction, and then we've just expanded to add private event rentals. These are some of the values of the organization that we really try to support within the space and to make sure we are practicing ourselves as staff and board members and volunteers. And I think this notion of community and generosity and, while you're at school, it's like sharing space, sharing resources, sharing ideas, and being connected to one another and being in this kind of professional environment that once you graduate, it can be a very scary world. So we wanted to diminish that scary, like, what the hell am I doing with my life period of time by hopefully creating a spot where people could come and continue doing what they had been doing and make lives and careers in there. So we started at Plant Zero in Manchester with 4 ladies in about 600 square feet. Now Studio 23 is about 13,000 square feet. So our notion of if you build it, they will come, and that Richmond artists needed a space to work has proven true. That was our very first print we ever pulled, and it said Studio 23 because I was responsible for the D, and I didn't do the reversal. So that's framed and we still have it, but that is our very first little session of printing in our tiny studio, which you can kind of see behind there. Became a nonprofit in 2011 and moved to West Main Street. right by Try-Me Gallery and across the street from Glave Cosin, right up the block from Visual Arts Center. So that was pretty cool because we got to experiment to see what we could do with a space that was like 6 times the size of the space we had before. So we started offering classes, offering field trips, decided to carve a giant map of Richmond, 8 by 8 feet, and print it with a steamroller at the Richmond Street Art Festival in 2013. And that was kind of our first foray into retail stuff that provides really cool things for people in the community, supports artists, and provides some revenue for us. And the thinking behind that was we'd carved this 8 by 8 foot map, and we thought like 2 days before, well, we have the file, maybe we should put it on t-shirts. And so that day, I think we sold like $7,500 worth of $15 t-shirts, and we're just kind of astounded. So that's continued. We moved to Scott's Addition in 2015. And the space, you can kind of see, I'm gonna go back, we had some very dark closet-like spaces for a few years. So when we moved to Scott's Addition and it had windows, it was like really amazing. Storefront windows wrapping around the building. And we've just expanded this past year. So you can see the back of the print truck there. At 1708 Gallery, we did a Americans for the Arts Advocacy Day. Our expansion space there, so we have a really large space for classes and events and field trips and team building and all the things that we were trying to do and had just run out of space within the span of a couple years there. And that is a grant writing class called Grantorama, which makes grant writing more exciting when you add orama to it. But we just had about 50 people come and learn how to write grants as individual artists, business people, nonprofit organization representatives. And we're really seeing that's becoming our niche to fill, is really supporting, working professionals and artists with continuing professional development opportunities. These are all the things that we know. I'm gonna skip over that. So we like to think we are really accessible. Like you can come in 24/7. We have a decent amount of earned revenue, which is kind of unusual for a nonprofit. So studio memberships and classes and retail sales and basically donations help us keep everything super affordable, below market rate for everybody that we work with. We have the power of the press, so we're our own print shop, which is cool. So we get to design and create all the materials that come out of our house. And it is a business run by artists, so it's kind of cool to be like, can we dream it up and do it? And usually the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no, but we're not too big to fail just yet. And nonprofit world is its own interesting labor of love and wonderful place to be, because you get to see the generosity of people who really want to make the city stronger, to support arts, to support creative culture. But then you also are really beholden to the IRS and reporting standards. And a lot of my work now is sort of the administrative side, but it is a cool kind of puzzle to see, how the different parts of the organization fit together. So these are the days that I am even more delighted to do what I do. This past summer, we worked with students in the Performing Statistics Project with Art 180 who are either currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, and over the span of just a couple days worked with them to create 250 t-shirts, 1,000 posters, 1,000 armbands that they used to march down Broad Street for their campaign to help end the youth to prison pipeline. And I think that really, that day, just working with kids who had no idea they could create something and then get it out in the world and actually share their message with it. I had a couple of the guys say, oh wait, I'm gonna come back here and I'm actually gonna sell these t-shirts. I don't know why we're giving these away, but I'm gonna create a career being a t-shirt printer. And that was pretty amazing. This is just another kind of artist support, full-time mother who comes in the middle of the night to write a book called There Is No Manual, the manual on parenting. So she puts her kids to bed and comes in and has a signed book deal and is making a living as a writer working at Studio 23. And in workshops, I think we're really discovering people connecting as professional artists, but also as just human beings who need a creative outlet, and kind of the healing and meditative power of art making has become more and more something that people are looking for. And I think that's, it's an interesting line to tread as, art not necessarily as therapy, but as an opportunity to connect with people in a way that is meaningful and peaceful and less stressful than a lot of the other things that we're surrounded with. And this is one of my favorite phrases. Y'all have opened your doors to all of us freaks and weirdos with open arms. And I can't thank you enough for being the one constant in my life. So this is a person who's been involved with the studio. They've been there probably 4 or 5 years in different iterations. And this was just a really rewarding and wonderful experience. So next is, pushing this business curriculum and really providing continuing opportunities and remembering those moments of why it matters and why we do what we do. So. I'm handing you the clicker. I'm done.
Oh,
I'm done clicking.
Ashley, come on. Give it up for Ashley, people. Come on. Come on. Let me ask you this. This is something that I hear a lot, art students, artists, blah, 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 blah. How is Richmond a good art community as a city, as a small city?
I think yes, in terms of what the arts community itself is creating, what we as artists and practitioners, and I think there's a huge amount of generosity in terms of, just saying, well, we don't do that at this organization, but you should go here, or what, I know who can help you, or let me look at that grant proposal. I think there's a lot of generosity and sharing within organizations, within individual artists. We're still small and we're competing for resources, so I think that's, always a reality when resources are finite. And I do wish we had more, administrative and governmental support for the arts than we do, and I don't really see that changing in the near future, unfortunately.
Do you mean with the city of Richmond, or you just think in?
Yeah, I think the Virginia Commission for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, they do amazing work and, are working with limited budgets and doing, crazy, pretty impressive things with very limited resources. But yeah, I do think the city should be doing more for the arts, but we also have, a lot of generous people who are willing to, fund individual artists as patrons and arts organizations, as donors. So I think that's really where kind of the nonprofit resources come in.
Can I ask you, so what I'm familiar of, you have like 1708, which is right down the street, which is this lovely small gallery, does a lot of progressive work, and then you have Art 180 that has ties into the community. What was it about your organization that you thought we can snuggle in and make this niche here?
Yeah, I think that there's that notion of access and of continuing practice as a professional artist was really where we started, in that you can come in and run a press, in the middle of the night. You can come print 500 t-shirts and sell them. So I think that really, the idea of a space where people come, work, share ideas, are actually creating the art that is emerging from their practice in real time beside one another, was what didn't exist before Studio 23 did. And really, we're fundamentally an organization for adults, for adult working artists. You can't be a member if you're under 18. And we saw that because there are organizations like Art 180, like the Visual Arts Center, that are doing such robust and wonderful programming for youth that there's no need to replicate. We partner with them whenever we possibly can and make sure that we're adding sort of the toolkit that we offer in print and, sort of business acumen and mentoring with professional artists to what they're already offering. So I think that's a really important niche, is to know your niche and to not duplicate efforts, because there are limited resources for everyone. And if somebody is already doing it well, then support them and advocate for them and help them be stronger.
What was it about starting this that, you got an MFA and, you get your MFA, that's your Master of Fine Arts, and then you got into the world. It's like, if you're lucky, maybe you teach part-time, maybe you become a house painter. I
became a really good bartender for a while.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things, you're just trying to make a living. And it's like, when did you know, or how did you know, like, hey, I can do this. I can run a whole organization. Because just listening to you, like, I believe you.
Good, thanks. That's part of my job, is convincing people to believe me. So that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do with their money. Last year or 2 years ago, this morning, I think there's always, like, there's always a hurdle, and there's always a learning curve, and there's always a challenge, and there's always something amazing and wonderful and rewarding, and that's what keeps it interesting and terrifying and wonderful. And my life's passion is fighting uphill battles, is celebrating victories, is having this this crazy kind of living, breathing organism. In some ways it was my first baby, and I guess I'll know that I'm done when that stops being true. And I think that's just an interesting perspective to have of an organization's life cycle. And we're still kind of the growing adolescent organization. We're past the tween phase, but it'll continue to grow, and one day I won't be the right person to run it. And that's, I think, something that's just come in time with as I'm going and as I'm learning that eventually it'll be time to hand it off to the next person who has, the energy and the commitment and the determination for that phase of the organization, which is humbling, but it's also, I think, less insane than thinking that I'm going to be there.
Why did you
life.
want to stay in Richmond as opposed to doing the same thing and going to Cincinnati?
I lived in Cincinnati for a couple years and I didn't like it, but
Really? You just picked that out of the blue.
Yeah, well, Mason, Ohio. It was 20 minutes north and home of Kings Island? Kings Dominion? No, Kings Dominion's here, so Kings Island.
Yeah.
We moved around a lot when I was young, and Richmond we settled here. I started high school here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was kind of the first place I'd laid down roots. Went to VCU and decided, well, why do you have to leave and go to Austin or LA or New York? Why can't Richmond be this holistic support for artists working? And it was kind of a rallying cry of well, damn it, just stay here. This is a good place to live. We're growing, we're building, we're getting better every day. So, yeah, it was home, and I knew that, pretty early into being here. It was more of a gut feeling than anything else.
I came to Richmond 25 years ago from San Francisco, and it was a very different city then. And, I came from Berkeley, California, and it's I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm going whoa, what have I done? And then the first time I was here during the summer, it was humid, I was just what have I really done? This is crazy. I remember I moved back down. I was teaching in New England, and I drove back down here to start working at VCU. And I had an apartment in the Upper Fan. Now they refer to it as the Museum District. And I remember I had a hardwood floor. All I had was a down sleeping bag. It was humid. It was hot, and it's that overcast, and it's 90 degrees. And if you come from the West Coast, if it's overcast, you're thinking it's cold. It's 50 and should be raining or snowing. But when it's overcast and it's hot and humid, you're going oh my God, what have I done? And then I slept on a hardwood floor on a down sleeping bag, and thinking I might have made a terrible mistake.
This is my life.
And I think the very next day I drove to Lowe's or some hardware store in here, and I bought a air conditioner. That was my first thing I bought. That baby's going right in the window.
Adult purchase.
And it's yeah, and I was and then the guy was going, and the salesperson, he was going I was talking to him and stuff. He was a nice guy. But I remember he goes, well, what do you do, Bob? And I go I teach at VCU. I went to VCU for a couple of years, and then I went that's where I'm teaching. The school that everybody goes to for 2 years. And I go, I'm at this giant state college, and then I discovered that it was really a good art school. That's why I asked her the questions about the Richmond community, because there are so many people, colleagues I've known and students I've known that have ended up staying here, and it's really evolved. I keep wondering how much more interesting Richmond can be, and I'm impressed. I'm really impressed at how much it's changed. In many ways, and so it's interesting. Somebody starting a nonprofit doing something like this is a thankless task.
Some days. Today was a good day. Well, so can you paint a 25-year years ago, arriving in Richmond, like landscape picture? Like what? I mean, VCU didn't look like this.
No.
There was no museum district.
No, no. Well, there was a museum there, but they didn't call it the museum district. The word came later, you know. And I would say the first thing I noticed, it's a beautiful city. I mean, all the stone, all the brick buildings and the fans, really pretty. And it's green in this big canopy, and it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks that I live in Oregon Hill now, and all of a sudden I'll see this guy, and then one day I'll come out and be like, and it's like all green, and it's all beautiful, and there's a zillion birds, and you're going like, wow, it's so green here. And basically where I come from, so the thing about California, you go, oh, California, it's a desert. Okay, you're really living in a desert for the most part. And, or like San Francisco is really more like, it's like Spain, it's like the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. It's like, they say the golden hills of California. It's because they're all brown during the summer. And thus water is like a big deal to us and everything. But yeah, no, Richmond was, the one thing I did notice as soon as I came to VCU, and one of the things that didn't impress me even when I came here for the interview, it always felt like I was familiar with some places like Rhode Island School of Design and some private art schools, and it kind of felt like a private art school. It felt like a good private art school. I was like, wow, they have all these departments and all this stuff. There was something about it that I did sort of think was different than the average, state college. Like when I went to a state college, like here, every department is like as big probably as my entire state college art department was. And so you had a painting and printmaking department, you had a sculpture department, you had craft material studies department, and they were all huge, and they were all sort of, so I was like, wow. So it was impressive, right from, that impressed me right off the bat. It felt different, and it was huge. It was huge. It was even huge then. Yeah. And so, honestly, I got hired to come in here into the design department, and to be honest with you, I had no idea how lucky I was that they hired me. I was actually, for 10 years I thought the dean was going to show up at my door and go like, Bob, we finally figured out, you charlatan. And I was going, okay, it's all right. Here's the keys to my classroom. I'll see you later. I'll just go quietly into the night, pack the truck, and drive across the border. And you busted me because, like the design department, when I got hired into it, was like fabulous. It was really amazing. I had no idea. I really had no idea. And for those of you who now are going to school here, the design department at the time was design, illustration, and media, which later turned into graphic design, comm arts, and kinetic imaging. But we were one big giant department, and we were huge. Maybe I should say this, I'll tell you the truth. We fought like cats and dogs.
Oh, sure.
We were just like at each other. I'm more important than you. We were at each other. And at the same time, I was working with, at the time, there were 3 people for sure, I would say. You've heard the term genius, and you think like, oh, so-and-so's a genius, that word's thrown around. I would say I might have worked with 3 different geniuses in that department, or people who I thought were really, 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 really smart, a lot smarter than me. One, Phil Meggs, who wrote the definitive book on graphic design history in the United States, and he was so disarming. He was this guy, had from South Carolina, had that kind of draw, and so he was disarming. You go like, he can't, this is the prejudice of maybe coming from the West Coast. Oh, he can't be that smart. And then you realize, I'd hear him in a meeting, he'd solve some problem, I'd go like, oh God, he really is that smart. Like he's really smart. And then there's Phil Meggs, and then there was, oh God, he taught in the, oh man, I forget his name now. What the heck? He was in the dance department, sculpture department for a while. Had
Chris Burnside?
No, not Chris Burnside. There was a show they had at him at the gallery that they reproduced his studio. and he was a painter too. God, it's embarrassing. I can't remember his name. It'll come to me, but genius. He had a photographic memory, and my students at the time would go like, he really does, because he would teach this lecture class of like 400 students, and then somebody would, and he'd look out in the group, and one of the students I know, he goes, "Oh yeah, like I didn't even think he knows 400 people in the class. He doesn't know my name." And he pointed right at me, and he had my name perfect. I go like, "How did he do that?" And she said, "It scared the hell out of me," you know. And he was a genius. He was kind of a bona fide genius. And then the other one, Katie Salen, who was hired here. You can Google her. She has a whole Wikipedia page that's like gigantic, and she's like a game expert. I think she might be the dean or the chair of the graduate school at the New College in New York City. And Katie was my office mate. And she was like 25 years old, right out of RISD, I think, was hired to this department. And there again, me and my colleague at the time, Dennis Rexroth, we came out of some faculty meeting, we had some big discussion. And Dennis comes up to me, he goes like, Katie's kind of intimidatingly smart. And I go like, "Oh yeah, Dennis." like she's like, if I'm this smart, she's like this smart, you know, and she's kind of a genius. And a wonderful person too, you know, so. But I had no idea when I was hired into that department how good it was. And then also all the illustrators and stuff, you know. A couple of days ago, I went to a really cool event, and this is the event that I think in some ways defines the School of the Arts in many ways, why it's a good place to go to school. Robert McGank, who's been an illustration instructor for 40 years, the ComArts threw this event for him, and his last lecture at VCU, and they had it in the Gray Street Theater. I knew McGank since I interviewed. I mean, I remember him sitting in the second row giving me the evil eye, like, "Who is this guy? I'm not gonna vote for him." And I said, "I gotta go to Robert's last lecture, you know, just because for old time's sake, you know." And I went, and the entire room, you guys, the entire Gray Street Theater was filled with the ComArts students. It was kind of touching. You know, I didn't want to get all mushy about it, but it was really sweet. And Bob gave this lecture, the 12 lessons of life, and he all tied it to rock and roll. And everything was like blah, 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 and rock and roll, blah, blah, and rock and roll. And it was kind of, on some level, I thought, when I went home, I was going like, "Oh, this is kind of corny." But at the same time, I thought, totally Bob, totally did. And behind him, they had all his work clicking by, his illustration. The amount of work that guy has done, and the clients that he had, like Rolling Stone, all this stuff. I mean, it was like, oh my God. I mean, you know, it's like sometimes you work with somebody and you go like, "Oh yeah, Ashley's okay. Yeah, Ashley, I know Ashley." And then every once in a while, like, Actually, it's kind of really great. You know? It's almost like you take people for granted or something because you work with them. Hey, yeah, see it. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that instead of you. I'll go to the AFO review if you don't want to. And then you realize, oh, and by the way, that person's a really great artist. You know? So.
Well, can I ask you something about?
Sure.
Talking about, I feel like we all have this as artists and aspiring artists, and that imposter syndrome of like when you're gonna be found out as not qualified to teach or not, you know, is that gone now?
No. I think it happens every day. I think it just changes. The rap, if you want to know, like as you become an old, I guess I have to say this, because I'm a senior faculty member now, just means if I'm older than Orla, who's like in her 30s, who's our latest hire, you know, a wonderful animator. I'm 66 years old. But the thing is like to go like, you have to kind of hopefully, instead of being that guy who goes like, you know, at the faculty meetings goes like, "Yeah, Ashley, I really think you might want to do that committee." You know, rather than doing that, maybe you, the kind of person, hopefully that you keep figuring out how to be a good teacher and how to teach well, and maybe even how to keep being a good artist. Like I just came from a critique, and my students killed it today. And I told them that. I said, at the end, "Everybody, I want you to listen to me for a second. because sometimes they don't know. Just kidding. And so they looked at me and I went like, I said, just for the record, you were amazing today. We had a great critique. You were critical, you were smart, you were measured. I have to say I was impressed. And it's like, and hey, I get paid to be here with you guys. You know, that's a good job. So maybe I should talk a little bit about what I do as an artist and stuff.
Would you like this clicker?
Let me see if the clicker will work here. Let me see if I can make this work. Oh. Sideways? Oh, there we go. Okay. So my name is Bob Kaputof. I got my degree from the Walla Walla Institute of the Criminally Insane in 1966. No, I just made that. I always wanted to say that. I went to Chico State, which is maybe like the Walla Walla Institute of the Criminally Insane. Chico State was known for, at the time, we were the #1 party school in America for 30 years in a row before Georgia Tech got it or something. So that's where I went to undergraduate school. It's an ag school. And so I went to, we learned we had a rodeo club. We had a rodeo at our college, anyway, Chico State. So, to my work. This is the Museum of Image and Sound in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I went to teach at USP, which is University of Sao Paulo, that's what they say in Portuguese. And and so I had a show there, and I started making these light pieces. And so what I have is these are color Xerox from different images, slides, photos, magazines, and then I mounted them onto a 1-inch piece of foam core or foam, and then I mounted a little tiny light bulb into them, like the size of a flashlight, and then I have them all run in series, and then we take a transformer and we put a dimmer to it. So these are all light bulbs. So you buy a light bulb, it's rated at like 20 volts, 50 volts, so many watts. Well, a flashlight is 1.5 volts. So I dim it down through this dimmer that I made to like 0.8 volts. So it's like the dimmest light you can see. But then I put a slide behind it, and then what happens when you turn the lights off, it looks like that. So you have a little spotlight overhead hitting it, and then you have the image, like that's the moon, and those are my two sisters playing in the bay in Oregon, somewhere on the Oregon coast, and a slide, and that's off to the center, off to the side there's my sister Pat. And this was all done at the dimmest light possible, so that when you entered the gallery, you would, your eyes would have to adjust, and then the longer you stayed in the gallery, the more you saw, because images sort of came up. And so a lot of my work had to deal at the time with memory, so it's like, remembering things, and so, but what's funny, this is my lesson. I started making these things, and I sort of figured out how to do this somehow in a studio in Sao Paulo, Brazil. But I don't even remember how I figured it out, but I was just playing with stuff or I don't know how you all make art, but the way I make art is I really do just play with stuff. So it's like, hey, what if I did this? What would that do? Or it's an accident. Oh, hey, that looks kind of cool. Hey, let me, so that's how I do it. So it's really a process of just playing. It's not like I wish I could say I have some giant concept, like, I'm just the meaning of life, and then I'm going to make art. Sorry, I just play with the light bulbs, and then suddenly, hey man, I got these family photos. Oh yeah, there's a picture of my sister. I'm going to make something with it, So it kind of comes like that, And then I kind of teach myself all this kind of like how to be sort of a bad electrician, or how to be a bad lighting guy. And so I just sort of figure out how to do that stuff. So somehow I just figured this out. Or I was playing with the slide. I wish I could remember how I did it, because I was at my friend's studio and I was going, oh, it's a little projector. And then suddenly, voila. And I had this show in Sao Paulo. And I guess my advice to you, if you ever get a chance to live overseas and a particular work overseas, do it. You got a chance to study abroad, do it. I count this as one of the most special times in my life, that I got to live in Brazil, got to, I had no idea what I was doing. And they dropped me off an airplane, and here I am in Sao Paulo, which at the time was the biggest city in the world. And I was just like a goofball running around. And this is a great artist lesson. What did I learn from Brazil? So you go to Brazil, they flew me around the country, greatest grant in the world, a Fulbright. They said, oh, you're going to Recife or someplace, Belo Horizonte. So I get off the plane, and guys take me someplace, and they go, oh, you're going to do a workshop for us or something. And they go, then they go, well, what do you do? And I'm saying, what do you mean, what do I do? You guys should know what I do. You brought me here. And they go like, oh, we just thought it might be interesting, like you were free, or something. There's something with the Brazilian guy. I go like, oh, okay. And I go like, but this is the lesson in Brazil. This is a lesson everywhere. I go like, well, I do video. I go like, oh, gosh, that's too bad. We don't have any video. I go like, okay, well, what do you got? Well, we got a ping pong ball, we've got a broken record player, we've got a light bulb that flickers on, and we have an extension cord that's dangerous. There's only one answer in Brazil. I think only one answer ever. You just go, I can make that work. And as long as you have that answer, Brazilians totally embraced you and loved you, because you were like, okay, hey. Because as American artists and stuff, like, oh, I gotta have the fanciest digital thing. No, man, it's just like, turn that light bulb in, hit it with a ping pong ball, and sing backwards the Beatles number. Suddenly it's art somehow, or maybe it's not, but you kept everybody happy. So that's what I learned there. So you have to be incredible. And the guy who sort of showed me all this low voltage stuff, this is basically lighting for an apartment store. Mm-hmm. But I was introduced to this guy who was like a Brazilian electrician, young hipster guy. He taught me how to do it, and we just built this stuff. I think all the parts were like from the IKEA equivalent in Brazil or something. And it was great. It was great, because it's just like, I learned from this guy. So what I do now, and this is what I've been doing lately. Now I'll just play a little bit of the video for you. And this is at Florida Central University. So now I've been building these giant like magic lanterns. And so this is all with light bulbs that blink and toys and things from hobby shops, and I take apart lenses and stuff and then all the things that they're all like alligator clips on like extending rods. There's something you do with these things. I just found them at a giant scientific supply place in Chicago, and I buy them. And so I build these kind of like narrative landscapes, and the sound is the actual sound of the light bulb. I put a certain kind of microphone on the light bulb and then run it through speakers and stuff. Everything is connected with alligator clips and like lines. Everything's run in parallel. I have some slides of it. So that's what it looks like. That was actually the first one I built. And is that another? And here's another picture of it. But this is the inside of it. That's what it looks like. So all these things are like, this is what I kind of like about art. That's John Henry over in the corner. We did the show together, and so we drove to Florida. This is the other thing about a life of an artist, okay? We have the show in Florida, Central University of Florida, and so it's like, 900 miles away or something? It's like here to Florida. And so we have to get this big contraption and all of John's stuff down there. And like, we don't have the money to pay for it. The college doesn't have the money, so it's on us. So we had a little money from the university and stuff. We load up his pickup truck. We drove 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We figured out the mileage. I think we drove 2,800 miles, like almost across the country, just to go there, set up the show, drive back, go there again, tear down the show, drive back. And the day we arrived, this is the most fun about making art. The day we arrive in Orlando, a hurricane is hitting. It's like, I had never been to really Florida before, and it's so humid that if you put your arms out, they like float in space. And the only thing I'm really concerned with is like, please don't lose the power because if it's so hot here, I'll just kill myself or drink myself to death or something. I just please don't lose power or whatever. And it's like raining like nobody's business. And when we were in the gallery, they actually, like the alert here, like, you must leave the university or you will die. And we're in the gallery working, and the gallery director left. Like, guys, you're supposed to leave. Okay, bye. And then they left, and I look at John and go like, you want to keep working? And then we go like, well, we might get her in trouble or get us in trouble if we stay here and work, so we better leave. But John needed something, so we drive to a Lowe's in like torrential hurricane winds because John wants to buy something. And we get to the Lowe's, and literally it's so raining you could hear the roof like it's all aluminum. I'm thinking, okay, that's a sofa, like a display sofa. I'll just sleep there tonight, Somehow John is the most amazing driver. We made it back to our apartment and we didn't die. And somehow we
And the show went on?
The show went on, we got the show up. But anyway, that's what they look like inside. And
How many times have you electrocuted yourself?
it's all low voltage.
Okay.
So the way it works is I go 110 from the room, and all the lights are controlled by a rectifier, which is a train set. Like you have a model train. You ever have a model train? You go, and the train goes faster, train goes slower. Well, basically, it's low voltage to run a train. So a train runs on like 24 volts or 12 volts. So you just dial it up. So I just bought a bunch of train transformers. I figured out that the train transformers will run the lights, and I could. Because all my lights are 12 volt, they're a 258 light bulb. Oh, this is an art story. So, I'm building this thing. It's the first time I built it, and I totally hustled the show, okay? It wasn't like they came to me and were like, Bob, you're such a great artist, please have a show at it. No, I hustled and, coerced my friends and talked to everybody and go, okay, get the show, Bob. So I got the show. And then I invited John, so me and John have the show. And, but now I gotta come through and build this thing. And it's a blinking light, making noise kind of sculpture. It's gotta work for 4 weeks. And if it doesn't, I'm flying to Florida on my own dime and fixing this dog, So I am living in fear of a month before and during the show. Just, please don't call me, please say it's working. So for me, how do I get ready? Or for me, like getting ready for a show, maybe like, I don't know about you, like getting ready for a critique. How do you get confidence? So how do I get confidence to go there and go, I think I can do this. I think I can pull it out of the hat. Because I might be a charlatan. I might have lied to them and myself. So what I do, I went like, first off, the bulb's got to blink for a month. So I do the hours, and then they got to blink for, I think I figured 120 hours. The light bulbs that I had that blinked only were rated for 60 hours. Okay, I need another 60 hours out of my light bulbs. So, hey, what does a big time artist do? He Googles flashing light bulbs and calls Bulb City in Atlanta, Georgia, and goes, hey, you got any of these special light bulbs that are rated at 600 hours? You go like, yeah. I said, I'll take them all. Really? He's like, give me it all. I don't care what they cost. And that's that point when you're an artist and you go, well, maybe I can't afford it. Forget the I can't afford. You've committed. They want you to do this. If you don't do it, you'll never work in this town again. And all your friends, Ashley, John, former students, Bob's a punk. I hate him. He's a lousy artist. He promised that he can't do it. You cannot. So, credit card. Chick, chick. Yeah. How much was that? Don't tell me. Just send me that bill in a couple of weeks and I won't pay it. No, I paid it. But I mean, it's like you just got to do it. You just got to do it. That's my point. So what I did is I set up in my studio a blinking light bulb, one blinking light bulb, because they said I got to know in my own soul, mind, and eyes that thing will blink for a month. So for a month before my show, every morning I get up in the morning, pet the dog, turn on my light bulb, go do my day, come home, still blinking. At 5 o'clock, I turn it off. And I do that for 1 month. And I knew And somehow I knew that if that would work for a month, I knew like, okay, John, let's go, baby. I'm gonna build this sculpture. And we built this whole thing. So that's what it looks like inside. And this is, I think, the one I built in Doha. And this one had a little bit more narrative, because they're kind of narrative. They're sort of storm. At the time, like, where does your work come from? Too much CNN. Korea was gonna, we were gonna kill, Korea was gonna kill it. We were gonna blow them up. It was acid rain. All my friends in California are environmentalists. So I thought, I should make some acid rain clouds. And then I should make some factories with, and you know, there's over the rainbow with Betty, or you know, something. And so I just, you know, you're just cutting out. And for me, it's like, also maybe the funnest part of art is when I know, like, I go like, I need a bunch of acid rain clouds, I need a bunch of thunder clouds, I need a bunch of factories. So I draw them, I just draw them, and then I rent like a really bad movie, like, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing, like a bad horror film, and I just sit in front of the TV and draw and cut it out with a razor blade, and like, oh, one cloud, two clouds. And so it's like hour and 20 minutes of cloud cutting. Then it's like, go to the next movie or go to Netflix. And it's like, I tell you honestly, sometimes that's my favorite part of art making, because it's like dumb, kind of repetitive work. And it's just like, I'm just cutting all this stuff out. And I kind of love it. And just so you know, I teach video. So it's like, this is like, but it's all light and stuff. And, oh, this is me and my dog. So I had to throw in a dog picture. That's Jebber the dog and me. You got to have a dog in your slideshow. And then this is another close-up. This is from the Doha piece, and that's a little toy submarine that you put baking soda in. You put it in your bathtub, and then it sinks, and then the baking soda makes it rise. So it's like an old, like, retro toy. But it looked great in my piece, so I did that. And then how do I get all the parts for the piece? Like, before I went to Doha, John was over there. I was in California, and I made a point that while I was on vacation, I would go to I went to 3 different cities, and I would go to every city, I would go to a dollar store, because a new toy store or a new hobby shop, and just look for parts. So I just go to places and go like, you go into the dollar store in Fort Bragg, California, which is a small town on the north coast of North California where all my old friends live. Hippie place, you know. So I go there and I go into the dollar store and I go like, the woman looks at me and I go like, magnifying glasses, aisle 5. I go in there, I buy them all. And then I come back, she goes, you want them all? I said, $20, I want them all. And I did that, there again, to get confidence, to store up stuff. So when I went to Doha, John was responsible for, in many ways, bringing me to Doha to build one of these pieces. And there again, the secret is this. I'm flying 6,000 miles and I gotta make sure this thing will work. And I was scared out of my mind. And they treat you really nice in Doha. So I was thinking like, if I don't pull this off, Bob's gonna be like, where's Bob? Somewhere in the desert. We just left him there. And so I remember I got there and I was excited and it was fun. And I went into that gallery room that they gave me. I unloaded this box, and there again, I knew if I can make one light bulb blink, I can make the whole thing work. And I'm working with the electricians. It's really cool there, because I'm working with these electricians that work at the school, and they're like, what are you doing? I go like, you know, and the voltage is different. So I was worried that I would instantly burn all my stuff up, just like that. So I had this big voltage converter that I brought over on the jet in a separate bag that was supposed to be cleared by customs, and I called all these people and cut it. No. So it looks like I'm taking a bomb through the damn airplane. It's a big giant black box. It's a transformer to drop voltage down, and I have to have enough amps. So I'm thinking like, oh God, I'm just gonna pull me off the plane and I'll be shot or something on the, you know, they'll throw me in the jet engine. And but I got there and these guys got it going, and as soon as that one light bulb blinked, I was like, oh, thank you, God. And then somehow I just sort of quietly said, why don't you guys go do something else and just leave me alone in here with my silly little cutouts and light bulbs. And when you come back, I'll have something built for you. And that was the most fun. And the other thing that was really cool about that particular experience, I got the piece to a certain, you rough it in and you kind of go, that looks pretty good, but I knew it's not quite right. And then I went like, I need to add more stuff to it, but I needed to cut some stuff. And so I went into a wood shop in Doha and met this alumni who was this design student who worked for IKEA, who was from Bangladesh. I mean, it's just like this interesting, and like, oh yeah, I can saw that piece of wood for you. I'm like the art professor. Can you saw this little 2x4? She goes, bzzz. And I go like, what are you doing? Did you guys just keep sawing this for you? Zoop, zoop, zoop. Drilling holes in the wood. I go back there and I keep putting my little like toys and stuff up, and somehow magically, at some point, I just looked at it and went like, it looks pretty good. I somehow pull it, because it's like a drawing. These things are like a drawing. I'm sort of making stuff, but there's no plan. There's no like, you know, like sometimes you go and build a sculpture like, okay, I built this in my studio, and now I'm going to go to Sweden, I'm going to build it again, it'll look exactly like that. Anything I build is never the same. What's in my studio, when it gets someplace else, it's going to change, because with this light stuff, if I just do this, it's different. Somehow the angle of the light looks different. So I build something, but I sort of rehearse it. Mm-hmm. And I just rehearse it a lot. Like before I went to Doha, I had the same. So my lesson of art making would be try to figure out something that you do or practice that gives you the confidence that when you have to do it, you have the confidence to do it right. That to me was the only thing that I've been fairly successful with these lately, but only because I set up some stupid little thing like I make the light bulb blink every night. Or I tell myself every day I'm gonna work on art, every day I'm gonna cut something out, I'm gonna move something, I'm gonna buy a new extension cord. Sometimes you kind of cheat and you go like, well, I didn't really make art, but I did buy another extension cord. So that's sort of towards the art, you know? So I do stuff like that, but it gives me confidence. So because this is the deal. If I make something bad or uninteresting, because I just made something bad or uninteresting that day, I can live with that as a person. I can go like, okay, I sucked today. And it's too bad I sucked, but I did. And I can accept that. I just wasn't good enough today, or this month, or this year. Sometimes it's a long stretch. But if I don't make it, or I screw up because I didn't practice or do my homework or prep for it, I can't live with that. Then it's like, I look myself in the mirror and like, you're a bad person. You deserve to go to prison forever.
Worst.
And you're the worst person that ever lived. And they're coming, they're gonna take your dog away. You know, it's like, I had a friend of mine in design who was sort of like doing this project on like creativity, like why do you create? And she, you know, and you talk to a lot of artists, I'm sure most people, 99% of the world, they'll go like, because I'm inspired, because I want to tell the world something. And Brooke, my friend, asked me, she says, Bob, why do you make art? Guilt. Total guilt, man. Mm-hmm. I want deadlines, I want guilt, I want somebody saying, if you don't do this, you'll go to jail, we'll shoot you. I want that. I like it. I like that edge. It gives me the rub I need.
The fire.
If I don't have it, I will goof off.
So I have to share this with you. So this is my art making mantra.
Oh, wow.
Panic later, which I feel like goes into your like just practice and then be confident and pretend like you're confident and do it. Like we went to Ethiopia and I had a driver almost take us off of the cliff because he was a bird watcher, Aziz, the bird watcher. So he would jump out of the car while it was rolling and like take photographs of birds while we're just like, so I'm sitting in the back like this. And so got home, survived, and realized that my mantra had to be like, you can panic about it or feel terrible or freak out, but just do it after the work is done. And I think that's like, it's so interesting to hear, like the deadline is there. Like I have to do it. I'm gonna be a failure if I don't meet up to what I said I'm going to do, and therefore I'm just going for it. Like,
yeah, and it doesn't matter whether you're 19 or 66. I wish I could tell you, hey, it all goes away when you get older. The bad news is you just try to keep doing it with some enthusiasm. But the good news is, because of art making, and because of being an art professor or whatever I am, I got to live in Brazil, teach in Brazil, meet all these Brazilians. I got to go to Doha, make something in Doha. Got to go to Florida in a hurricane. I mean, there's also an adventure to all this that I think is really cool. Like when me and John drove to Florida, it was an adventure. I had never had boiled peanuts in North Carolina. And I thought, John was really into this, and I was like, what are you eating? He goes like, you like these, Bob? I go, get out of my life, dude. Of course I ate them as much as he did. And it's like, but it was an adventure. It was fun to go there and like have this adventure. When we went to Doha, it was fun to be scared and have this adventure. When, you know, that's also why you do it. I mean, because of art, I've got to go all the way around the world once. And that was really cool. I actually figured, all my friends I was telling, I went from here, Richmond, Chicago, Tokyo, Beijing, Doha, back to Richmond. So I circumnavigated the world. But I did fly all the way around the world. I was really excited when I figured out I was going to get to do this. My friends in California, who I was, they were like, yeah. They're like, everybody's done that, Bob. I was like, really? I'm the only one who hasn't done it yet? It was totally fun. So, I mean, that's maybe also, too, the life experience you get from making art, having exhibitions, meeting new people. That's also part of it, you know, that I think is exciting. And, you know, it's been exciting for me, the people you meet, the stories you get to tell, the lies you propagate, you know, all that stuff, you know. I think that's really, really cool. So and also, if you're a super famous artist, hopefully, maybe people will call you up and say, hey, we really want you to show our work. I'm not a super famous artist, just, you know. So every single show I get, or I've gotten lately, is only because I've also, I swear, is hustled. It's like, hey, man, you really want me to do this for you? You know, like, why? Because look at that. Oh, man, don't you want that little sub in your window or something? And every single thing I've gotten in the last 3 years is only because I have personally, on the phone, hustling, talking, sending in stuff. And that's one of the things when you become an artist, too, is there's the art making, but then there's the business of art. I was actually teasing my students because in the last 6 months, all I've done is go to art meetings. It's meetings about making art, but it's sort of like, you know, and I'm hoping, like, I hope this pays off. Yeah. But you got to do that or you don't get the other thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that hustling for yourself it's uncomfortable, but it's also I feel like the only way anything works.
Yeah,
you know?
And the deal is, it doesn't, you know, I have, some people go like, oh, I don't want to be part of the gallery system. I'm not part of the gallery system. I don't have a gallery. It's just like, heck, you know, I'll build something in a state park. I just got to talk to park system into letting me do it, you know, or I got to talk so-and-so and they're like, hey, is that your storefront? I kind of want to build something there because it looks good with blinking lights in it, you know. So it's just like, you just find it and then you hustle them, or not hustle them, I shouldn't say, that sounds like you're being dishonest, but you approach them and you say, hey, I'd like to do this, and what do you think, you know? And if you're lucky, half the time they say yes. Or this much of the time you're asking, and this much of the time they say yes. But it's that little bit you live and die for, you know?
And then you get less sad when they say no. I've learned that in asking people for money is all you can do is ask, and then they control their decision. You know, you don't control it. So it's not that I've failed as a human being. I mean, I might have failed in asking them the right way, but at least, you know, doing it is most of the battle.
Right. And just so you know, so light, just the extension of this, I'll tell you, I won't promise anything, but the latest thing I'm working on now, or the thing I'm trying to do with light, is slide projectors. You guys probably don't even know this, with 35 millimeter slide with I'm trying to use those to make a outdoor light piece. And I think it's going to have a sound thing that is going to be part of it too, but it's like now I'm trying, I was just on eBay last night looking like, oh, how much do these cost? They're really expensive. I was thinking I'd get them for like $10 a piece, but they're like $90, $500 yeah, a slide projector. I was like, so now I'm going around every like department in VCU going like, hey, you got any slide projectors in that closet? Can I borrow that? You know? So literally, I teach in KI, Josh runs all the equipment. He said, I got some in there. Let me just take those, Josh, off your hands. Don't worry, Josh. Well, I'll take care of that, baby, you know, for you, you know. So we'll see what happens with that, you know. And there again, the art thing or the thing for somebody, like you make stuff. So then you got to figure out, okay, I want to do something. I'm going to want to do something in, I'll just say, I won't tell you where right now because it'll jinx it, but a remote location. So I have to have power. So now I'm already trying to think about, okay, generator, giant battery. I don't know anything about giant batteries, but I can learn. So now I'm like, oh yeah, how do you hook up car batteries to make 12 volt, you know, and like, I'll buy, you know, like what, you know, anyway, I won't go into it. Because it's all weird, technical, obscure stuff that nobody should know. But when they have solar powers and their panels and they're trying to save batteries, you know the battery that they use most often now, I think? Golf cart. There's a little tiny battery that goes in a golf cart that runs a golf cart. Didn't know, but I know a lot about golf cart batteries now.
Well, I think that's, yeah, if we're doing it right, we're not bored. You know, we're
Right.
always learning something. So that's pretty rewarding.
I don't know the format too. You have all been very generous and have been polite and everything. Do you have any questions or of either one of us?
I have one. I have more serious questions, but what's your dog's name?
What?
What's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Jebber.
Jebber. Oh,
It
that's
was
great.
actually, okay, I'll tell you the real story behind the dog's name. The real story is this. The dog was given to me and it was Jeb, as in Jeb Stewart, I guess it's a Confederate general guy. And I was like, I'm from California, so I'm going to sexy the name up, and you're Jebber now. And he's an adopted dog from Cleveland. He was a street dog that then was scooped up, and then somebody got him, and then somebody needed to get rid of him for different reasons, and then somebody said, you should have this dog. And I said, okay. And I resisted forever. I was like, yeah. Because people are always trying to give you dogs. Yeah. Oh, don't you want this? Like, yeah. No. So they finally gave me the dog. And then they said, oh, well, you could take a walk with the dog. Okay, take a walk with the dog. And then they go like, this friend of mine was doing this to me. She goes like, oh, now you have to have a sleepover with the dog. Well, listen, we're not dating. No, a sleepover with the dog. And I go like, oh, okay. And I was really against it. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who's a very successful designer for Pottery Barn Kids in San Francisco, California. And I was talking to her, one of my best friends. I talk to her every Saturday. And I was going like, yeah, they're trying to give me a dog. She goes, take the dog. I go, well, I don't know about that. Bob, it's about time you took care of something other than your miserable self. So take the damn dog and shut up about it. So I know I'm going to take the dog when she delivers it, but I get the dog. What's the worst day to get a dog for a dog that you can get a dog? What's the worst day for a dog? Maybe. Think about it.
The surgery.
What?
When they have the surgery.
No. What's the worst day for?
4th of July.
Yes. I was going to go like, 4th of July. Oh, dog's running away. Oh, no, Paul, we're going to die. Jebber comes over, he's got the little scarf, red, white, and blue. She was really going the whole, and I was going like, oh, get the dog. And I like the dog, you know, but I'm thinking, dog. And then 4th of July in Oregon Hill at that time, this was like 4 years ago. I mean, guys are throwing rockets at each other. It's like, literally, I'm on my front porch and my neighbors are like having Roman candle fights, like, you know. Jebber is sitting on the front porch like this. Yeah, what's the big deal? I'm from Cleveland. And I looked at him and I went like, you're my dog. And that's how we got it from there on in. And of course, you know, and now we're totally inseparable, you know. I'm like a dog lover guy, you know, and you know, everything, and friends visit me and go like, you know, and it's like I feel guilty, like your dog's spoiled. And you know, that kind of thing. And I know I kind of have the image of the rough, tough guy, but I'm all about the dog. So it's like, I totally love the dog. So, I mean, and that's, well, so anyway, yeah. And the other day I almost had a second dog. Cute little husky snuck into my backyard. And so suddenly I had two dogs. And then I realized that the dog belonged to the students who were next door. And hey, I got to give your dog back to you. Otherwise I'm going to keep it. Take care of it now. It's the cutest little husky I'd ever seen. It was so cute. Huskies are the new, I guess, hip dog. Everybody has a husky. For a while when I lived in Richmond, I noticed there was chocolate labs, which are also a beautiful dog. So, but it's funny seeing the dog. And I'm a dog walker 365 days a year, snow, rain, and also I wake up every morning at 4. I'm one of those guys. So like, I'm the guy, like I'm the old guy in the neighborhood, like, oh yeah, Bob, he's the guy, you're the guy who always walks. People have actually referred to me like, oh, you're the guy who walks the dog. Yeah, that's me. That's my total identity. I'm the guy who
dog
walks the
walking
dog.
guy.
I'm the dog walker. And I go like, oh, it's better than nothing. So anyway, yes.
I actually have a question. So, I mean, you've been working at VCU for quite a while now, and you attended VCU and know the area quite well and grew up here. So, I mean, I'm a freshman this year in AFO. I'm just finishing. What are some things that you think Richmond, in particular, like the arts program growing and building itself over the years, has lost, and something it has gained throughout its time that you have known it?
What it's lost.
Or gained.
I mean, I think that that's a really good question that I don't know if I have an answer for, because it's in some ways, I feel like my association now with VCU is through our interns who are coming from VCU and through being invited to do cool stuff like this. And so I don't have like the intimate kind of knowledge of, what it's like every single day. I do know that walking back into like the arts buildings, and just like my heart is aflutter, and I miss, being in the studio all the time. And so I feel like that magic is still there, that like just group of wacky people who have decided to go into this thing that is not secure and not guaranteed and is terrifying, and you're doing it anyway. So congratulations on that. And I hope that we're gaining notoriety. We're on everybody's like top 10 hipster list for all things beer and tattoos and food and art, hopefully. So I think it'll be interesting as we grow and continue growing as a city, how we manage that like welcoming, kind of small town, big city feel that I think makes people really enamored of Richmond as we're actually becoming a bigger town. And I'm on a master plan like advisory committee for the city, and I've just learned we're never growing bigger. We're like 63 or 64 square miles of city. And the counties aren't going to let us annex any of it. So like as Richmond grows, we're really talking about like more people in places that aren't being used, or more people in places that have been used by other people. So I think that's going to be just interesting to see, and how we direct that as artists, because I think people are listening to artists and asking for insights, and hoping to grow in a way that's sustainable and doesn't push anybody out. So.
Yeah, it's a good question.
To think about that one.
I don't know that I have any better answer for that. She makes an interesting point, though. I think it's a law in Virginia. You can't annex a county. Like I think in North Carolina, like Charlotte grew really big, but I think in North Carolina, they can go, hey, Henrico, you belong to us now. But in Virginia, we're in Henrico County, or get out of here.
Yeah.
So the city. So there again, what she's saying could be that we're going to become even more urban, because we'll be more people in the same footprint that we have now. So we go up or we go this, and then the question becomes, how do you manage, what do they call it, gentrification, and not displace communities that have been here for a long time? And how do you do it in a way that everybody benefits, not just a certain group or economic group, that sort of thing, So it'll be, in terms of what I think that it's tough to say what VCU lost. As you become a bigger school, maybe you lose some of that weird funkiness that you used to have. Hard to believe that, but the sculpture department, which is now over, that you guys all know used to be over here, it used to be over in the most dangerous, like, building like you've ever imagined. Like when I first came here for my interview, it was like a car dealership building, and they moved the sculpture. When I say dangerous, probably it didn't meet any OSHA laws. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff, like, hey, you know, like, how's the AC system or something? Like, what AC system? I mean, but there was a great energy that, like, when I first came here, like my first degree is in glass design, and so I was a glass blower. And so when I first came here, I would do glass blowing, and I could take a class as an instructor. So I did glass blowing, but the glass blowing facility at that time was right behind the president's house. It was this totally funky little building. God, maybe I shouldn't say this on camera. Anyway, there were just a lot of practices that were like, I don't know would officially work anymore. But there was something fun about that. There was something funky about that, because sometimes you learned by, like, wow, geez, that thing's sparking. You think that's, I mean, this is a true story. Like, wow, you think that's dangerous? Yeah, probably, you know? And I'm going like, well, let's see if we can fix it, you know? And so that kind of like funky way of getting things done, or like, well, you know, that's probably, why don't we just put a pipe there and that'll go out there and we won't breathe that anymore, you know? So you lose that, but there's a funness in that kind of funkiness and stuff. And then what you gain is the school's got a great reputation. You have, you're able to hire a more diverse group of people to come and teach. You're able to attract, hopefully, a more diverse group of people to be part of the school and stuff. And so, and you can allow more departments to kind of flourish. Like, as I say, when I was hired, there were no comm arts. There was no, and now comm arts is the largest single department, undergraduate department in the School of the Arts. And it's a wonderful department, you know? And design's a separate department. KIO, we're over here, we're a separate department. And at one time we were all thrown together. And because they split us up, each of us were able to grow and have our own identity. And we all went through pains of growing, you know, but that's part of it. You know, that's all part of it. And I think we all ended up in a better place for that, you know. And so there's some of that goes on, you know. So I think if that makes sense, that's what we gained, you know, from it, you know.
You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question for you. Do you feel like VCU prepared you as an artist, like post-graduation? And then, what did you wish you knew?
I don't think the business part of it was, you know, while I was here, the fact of the matter being that you are a hustler and you are a business person and you are an entrepreneur if you're choosing to be an artist in the world. But I also don't know that I think, you know, as we fill that niche as Studio 23 and as other organizations are doing that, I think there's something to be said for spending 4 years really developing a creative practice and really, you know, pretending as though, you know, life after school doesn't exist, because that's when you find that thing that you've fallen in love with and that you have to do, or you're gonna stop breathing, you know, hopefully not, but you know, that compelling like impetus to keep making something and to fall in love with that. So I think the critique process and the thinking process and all those like 21st century skills that we artists have, that, you know, Fortune 500 companies want to hire us to consult on business problems, like all of that I think is really important, in that your brain learns to function like you're kind of rewired in some ways as an artist in a way that, you know, somebody with, you know, a physics degree, I don't know, wouldn't be. So in that regard, I think, you know, I did feel very prepared for the world, because I was like prepared to sit in front of a room full of people and be like, here's my heart, I've poured it out in this painting and now please rip it apart. And then they did, and I woke up and continued breathing the next day. So I think that, you know, having your ego beat down to some extent and then waking up and realizing that you want to do it again and do it better so that the next time it goes a little better is like a pretty invaluable experience to have, especially pretty early in life. So, did that answer your question? Okay.
All right, well, we should thank these guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
It was nice to actually meet you in
Nice to
real
meet you.
life.